not everyone should be a parent, yet everybody has the ability, the biological ability to become a parent. Crazy world we live in, right? Where a human life can be brought into this world by no fault of their own, yet they can be treated as less than a human. The sad reality is that a lot of children grow up in an environment where they're made to feel like their existence doesn't deserve the basic level of respect, that their thoughts, their feelings, their opinions, their voices don't matter, and they're a major inconvenience. Their very existence is a major inconvenience to the people that brought them into this world. And no one deserves that. My friend, if you grew up in such an environment, it's more likely than not, it was toxic. And in this video, I want to talk about how not only I escaped my toxic parenting environment, but how you can do the same step by step. Now, I want to preface this video by saying that this is by no means like, I'm not a registered psychologist, yeah? Let's get that right. I'm not an officiating body. I don't have formal training. This is just my own personal experience for what worked for me. And when I've shared this with others, it's been able to help them. And I feel like sharing my experience and sharing my strategy on the internet hopefully can help many more people. Now, I'm a PK. For those who don't know what that means, it means pastor's kid of African origin. So for those who are of African descent, you can imagine what kind of life that looks like. In African culture and many other cultures, children are basically to be seen and not heard. Their voices don't matter, and anyone who's older than you is your elder. They know best, and you must do as you're told. You speaking back or even voicing your opinion can be seen as a massive sign of disrespect. And in African culture, physical chastisement is very much the norm of lay of the land. So very quickly, you're taught as a child to basically hide yourself, make yourself small, make sure that you don't ruffle any feathers or cause any trouble, because if you do, you can get beats, you can get shouted at, you get called names, insulted, and a lot of the time, my gosh, the relationships that parents are in, like the marriage, the partnership, bro, it's like they hate each other. It's like I don't even know how they even got married. Like you as a child are living in such a hostile environment where your parents aren't friends, they're constantly fighting, you're absorbing that as a child, and this is your first experience of what human interaction should look like, what relationships should look like, and it's not a healthy one. So yeah, a lot of children develop coping mechanisms, some healthy, some not healthy, in order to get through this. And it cascades into their relationships as adults, the way that they, people that they form bonds with, right? They can be good, they might not be good. You don't voice your thoughts, your opinions, you keep to yourself. You go along with things that you know aren't good for you because you're too scared to ruffle feathers, right? I'm very much speaking from my own experience. Like at work, I don't stand up for myself. I don't put myself out there because I'm scared I'm gonna get things wrong, and if I get things wrong, I'm gonna get in trouble, and that's not right. Life is about taking risks and learning from those failures. It's literally not that deep, but growing up in such an environment, it's instilled in you that you literally can't make mistakes, you can't do anything wrong, otherwise you're going to get in trouble. So yeah, for me, I very much hated the environment that I grew up in. I wanted to leave as soon as I could. So I have two suggestions to escape. One is escaping physically, and the second is escaping mentally / emotionally. Now, depending on how severe the toxicity in the household that you're living in is, you may be able to get away with, staying in an environment, but escaping mentally and emotionally. And I'll talk more about what I mean by that later on in this video. But for the majority of us, we just want to get out of that. We want to get out of Dutch. We want to get out of that household environment. So how do we do that? How did I do that? Step number one, you can't rush it, unfortunately. You need to establish financial independence. And in this day and age, cost of living, the job market that we're in, you need some sort of education in order to get there. So if you're listening to this and you're still in school, you're doing your GCSEs, please do as well as you possibly can. Pass your maths, English and science. For you Americans, I think that's middle school, I think, or high school, one of those two. Anyways, like the schooling that you do up until age 16, right? Do as best as you can in them, because you will need at least that baseline level of education in order to get most jobs in this world. Secondly, once you've done that, you need to get a part-time job in order to start saving money. Why? Because you need this money in order to start building an emergency fund, which is a buffer between you and life, and also start saving for a deposit to help you move out. You want to be prepared and not caught unawares. And also, you need to learn to live on a budget. Now, it's very likely that at this age, when you're younger, when you're 16, 17, you don't have much expenses. However, it's a necessary skill that you're going to need if you're going to be living outside of your parents' household to be able to keep your finances on track and not blow your spending. Otherwise, you're going to end up back at square one begging them for help, and no one wants to be doing that. Now, once you are you've got your part-time job or you're in the process of getting your part-time job, you need to decide what your full-time career path is going to be. Now, if you don't know what that is, I don't necessarily recommend just opting to go to university, because you're going to get in debt for a degree that may not be helpful. And especially in this day and age of AI, the entry-level jobs that you're going to be able to get out after those 3-4 years might not even exist. So if you don't know what you want to do and it doesn't require a degree, I would recommend, just sticking to a vocational course like BTEC in the UK, or looking for apprenticeships, because at least with an apprenticeship, you will get paid to learn on the job, and most likely than not, that apprenticeship will turn into a full-time job. Or at the very least, you will be more qualified than the majority of other people looking for work who don't have experience. Because let's face it, the number one thing that employers are asking for in job applications is previous experience. But how do you get previous experience if you never had a job before? So apprenticeships are the gold standard for that. And if I could go back, I went to uni personally, but if I could go back, I probably would have done an apprenticeship, because I would have been able to come out without all this student loan debt. Now, fast forward, you've qualified, you completed your apprenticeship, or you're coming out of university. What's next? Well, you need to land yourself a full-time job, a decent job. It doesn't have to pay 6 figures. It will not pay 6 figures, but you need a consistent salary that will allow you to sustain yourself without the support of your parents, because you're trying to move out for good and not go back. Therefore, like I said, if you went down the apprenticeship route, that's fantastic, because now you should be able to land a full-time job from that and look at moving out. And for that, my tip is, don't rent anywhere that is more than 25% to 30% of your take-home pay. Very hard to do in this cost of living, yes, but what that means is that you may need to house share, or whatever it is. Just share the accommodation that you're living in with someone else. Live somewhere that is not, your dream place of living. Fair enough. Rent anywhere. What have I been saying? Apprenticeship, renting somewhere. They want to go crawling back. Anyways, so that's the apprenticeship. Now, if you went to university, right, in order for you to land a job outside after university, you need to be working on building your experience whilst you're still doing your course. So one, I'd recommend doing a course with a sandwich year rather than one with a year abroad, because that sandwich year will give you a year in industry, which is experience. And off of the back of that, there's a very high likelihood you can turn that internship, whether it's a summer internship or full year in industry, into a graduate place. And if you are successful in that graduate scheme, you can then turn that into a full-time job. So there's a direct path into corporate UK, corporate America. You just need to be intentional about it. But once you're there, again, the same, tips and tricks ring true. Find a place no more than 25 to 30% of your take home, if possible. That will give you a lot of room in order to still put food on your table, save and invest, and build your way towards financial freedom from independence. Now, I've talked a lot about the physical escape from a toxic environment. Complete transparency, that was my path, like the university route. Okay, I did my A levels. In fact, I failed my first year in A levels because I didn't know what to do. Listened to my parents' advice. They said do science subjects. I had no interest in them. Didn't study. Failed that nicely. I remember the day that I got my results. My gosh, I wanted to bury my head in the sand 6 feet deep, man. I wanted Jesus to come that day because I knew I failed. You know what I mean? Like even in the exam, my maths exam, I think I got 15 out of 300. Yeah, it's that bad. So, anyways, I knew I failed, and yeah, I can make a separate video on that experience. But because of that, I had to retake my A levels, and I did 3 years during my A levels. I think that's 3 years in high school for you Americans if you're listening, rather than 2. And off the back of that, I went to university as well, like a good one as well, and one that was far away from home because I wanted to get away from this environment. I couldn't wait, boy. And for me, that day that I left, the weight off my shoulders of just constantly fearing my parents being at home, someone arguing, someone shouting, being called to do something, not doing it right, and getting screamed at, making mistakes, not being able to voice myself. That was all gone the day I went to university because I didn't have to live there anymore. I was by myself. I felt free. And in fact, I even met such amazing people, friends to this day, who also went through similar experiences. Call it trauma bonding, boy. But we helped each other. We shared our experiences, and it made it apparent to me that this isn't just a me thing. This is a generational thing where you've got one generation of ethnic migrants that have come to like the Western civilization. Their children have grown up in this Western civilization, seeing like how other, native families treat their children, and seeing that that's not what they're getting at home. And the migrants, like the first generation diaspora, are using what they've learned to raise their children, which isn't right a lot of the times, a lot of the cases. It's not a respect thing or disrespect thing, however you want to look at it. I'm a human being with thoughts, feelings, opinions. It deserves to be valued. And you are just throwing your weight as the adult in this relationship about because of respect or whatever. Now, anyways, I digress. I studied. I went the internship route, turned that into a grad scheme, turned that grad scheme into a full-time job, got married, had kids, moved out, fully at the age of 20, how old was I? 2022, I think 2020, I was 24 when I moved out properly. And boy, I didn't go back for like 3 years to see my parents because I did not want anything to do with them. I was very angry and bitter at my upbringing. But that segues nicely onto the next part, the emotional and mental escape from that environment. Although I was physically free, mentally I wasn't. I would dream. I had like the whole time that I was at home, like growing up, I would have dreams of fighting my dad, fighting my mom. I would be saying things that I wanted to say to them in person, but I didn't feel like I could, because I'd be shut down, I'd be insulted, I'd be cussed out. Like, would I get thrown out of the house? Would I have somewhere to stay? Where would I even go? Right? So that fear stopped me from, vocalizing how I felt. And even though I was free physically, mentally I wasn't, because I was still having these dreams. I was still having, like, repeating the same conversation with, like, my wife, my friends, like, how are African parents this way, African parents are that way, and they still had a hold of me. Like, you took me out of the toxic environment, but I didn't take the toxic environment away from me or out of me. And so, like, yeah, it came to a point where, like, after much praying, I decided that, boy, I'm going to send them a message. I'm going to write down a message about how I feel about them, my experiences growing up in that environment, how that has impacted me, my relationships, my self-confidence, my self-worth and image, and how I've felt the anger, the bitterness, the pain, the sadness that I felt with them being my parents. Like, I did a first draft, and, like, obviously my wife helped me with this, but I refined it to get it to the point that I was happy with, and then I sent it to them. Part of that message was also telling them that if I'm gonna have some sort of relationship, it's gonna be on these terms. Like, I set my boundaries, and if they didn't, and I was at the point now that if they didn't, accept responsibility and accountability and agree to the relationship on these terms, like, I was walking away from that. I was not gonna be in contact with them anymore. So prayed, sent that message off, and I blocked them. I blocked them for like 2-3 days, because I wanted them to actually read the message before I would, speak to them again, because I wasn't about to, relive an experience where I've tried to talk to you, I've tried to tell you how I think and feel, and you just taking a fat dump all over it, and we've gone nowhere. If anything, relationship's worse now. So after 2-3 days, unblocked them. Had messages from both of them saying that they read the message, like my message. They'd want to talk, and off the back of that, I had a phone call with them. Thankfully for me, they came to their senses. I would say they were apologetic, and they accepted accountability for what they had done, like growing up and my experiences with them. And they said that, yeah, they'd want to build a relationship, on the terms that I'd outlined. I wasn't about to be all buddy chummy with them, because that's not real. And if I'm going to build a relationship with someone, I want to be real. And they were like, cool, yeah, that's fair. And since then, like, I'd say we've been working on our relationship. Like, for the first time in 3-4 years, I went back home, for Christmas, actually, just for like literally not even a day, like a couple of hours, so my parents could see the kids, and like, that was okay, and I speak to them, call them, and they respect the boundaries I've laid out, and likewise, and vice versa. And ever since I sent that message, like, and I haven't had a dream where I've been fighting them. And even making this video, it's very difficult to remember the things that had happened growing up, because I no longer carry that emotional burden around with me. Like I said in that message, I said everything that I wanted to say, growing up to them. And if it was the case that they weren't receptive to that, I was prepared for that. But for me, the main thing was actually speaking my truth, speaking the truth, and letting it be known. Because growing up, they said everything they wanted to say to me, and I just had to sit there and take it. But now, as a result of that, I no longer have to, and this has trickled through in my career, at work. I feel confident to speak up, to say what I think, what I feel, obviously within reason. Like, your co-workers aren't your boys, bro, and HR is not your friend. So yeah, I'm professional with it, but I still stand on what I think, and in like my day-to-day relationships with, you know, people that I meet, friends, or just strangers, like I'm just more confident to be myself because I know that the things I have to say matter. Like, have you noticed that like a lot of the successful people in this world, they don't care about how they are perceived and what they say. They just say what they say and they stand on what they say. They don't care about how it affects other people. But because they're so confident with it, they get away with a lot of things. And people end up either fearing them or just doing as those people say because of the, I guess, the aura, the negative aura they emit. And actually being the case, if anything, the good people of this world, like the nice people, those people that you want to be around, like you and me, like we are the ones who should be confident, exuding, you know, positivity into the world, and people should want to be like us and helping others, lifting each other up, encouraging with our words, and not tearing each other down. So yeah, I'm doing as much as I can in my day to day to exude that positivity, and even making this video is not easy. Like trying to reflect on, you know, my experiences growing up, but I know that this is an epidemic that a lot of Gen Z and millennials of ethnic origin are facing, and I don't know like what it's like for those of us who are Caucasian. Like I don't know what, you know, life is like there, but if you are in a same, you know, toxic environment, then I guess the same rings true. But I can only speak from my experience because of my African heritage. So yeah, this video is rambling on a little bit. For you to truly be free emotionally, you need to tell them what you think about them, respectfully. Of course, you need to say how you feel. You know, if you want a relationship with them, what the terms are, and set clear boundaries. Now, that's easier said than done, especially if you're still physically in that area and it doesn't feel safe to do so. So, like, I'm not saying like tomorrow if you're at, you know, you're 14 and you live out here and your parents are, you know, toxic as heck, like to go give them a piece of your mind. No, that's not what I'm saying. But just know that if you don't do it now, like one day you will need to in order to be truly free of this toxicity that sits within you in your subconscious. It eats at you, trust me. But if, you know, your environment isn't that bad, you may be able to do this now at a tender young age of up 10 or however old you are when you're watching this. You know, if you're still at home, you can tell your parents, you know, what you think, how you feel, and start to stand your ground, do you know what I mean, when it comes to your emotions and what you think, what you feel. If you don't feel safe to do so, then you might need to put physical space between you guys before you can do so. That's what I did, and it's only after that that I, you know, truly felt free or in a position where I could speak, you know, my thoughts, my feelings. So that's for you to assess, and let me know in the comments like below, like what kind of situation you guys are having at home. I'd love to kick off a discourse with, you know, strangers on the internet, diasporans, and you know, local natives who are dealing with toxic parents. Just know you're not alone. This isn't, you know, just a you thing. It's an epidemic, for sure. And I'm very happy that we have, you know, platforms like YouTube and social media where we can come together to discuss these things, because it's only by talking about them that they can be addressed and things can get better. So yeah, let me know what situation you guys are in the comments, and I'd love to, you know, comment and like kick off a discourse with you guys, share some stories from my upbringing as well, to help try and motivate you to see that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and it does get better. It does get better, trust me. If you can stick through it and get through this phase of life, it will. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to see more of my videos. I talk personal finance, I talk life, I talk investing, because I'm personally invested. The question is, are you?